Let's always drink the good stuff.
It's about food, art, travel, music, culture, lifestyle. It's interesting conversations with interesting people. And yes, sometimes it's even about drinking the good stuff.
We're really excited to have with us today Larry Schaefer. Larry and I have known each other for a while, but we really don't know each other that well. So I'm happy that you came here today from Sol Wang, one of my favorite places in the Central Coast. I love going up there. Great wineries, great restaurants, and thanks for coming in today, Larry.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Excited to be here.
You've been in the wine world for a very long time. How long have you been in the wine world, and what got you started?
A long time is all relative, but yeah, I've been in the wine business for about 20 years now.
Wow, okay.
It's pretty amazing to think I've been in it for 20 years. What got me started was a need to do something different. I was in the music industry and the publishing industry, and I love music. My first job out of college was actually in working for a record company because I really wanted to get into the A&R marketing side. Didn't happen, moved on to something else. 25 years ago, I got to a point where I felt like my mind wasn't being challenged. Life is way too short to, I think, ever get to that point. Started having kids, realized I need to show my kids you better enjoy what you do. Started going back to school, was living in Orange County, started taking classes at community colleges down there with kids who literally could have been my kids. Taking all the science classes I never, ever, ever thought I would take. General chemistry, biology, etc. Worked part-time in Temecula at a couple of wineries down there to kind of get my feet wet. And that all led up to transferring to UC Davis, where I had started as an undergraduate way back when, and I ended up getting my master's in viticulture and enology from Davis. Graduated in 2005, moved up to where I live now, which is the Santa Ynez Valley. Started at Fess Parker Winery there, and then branched off to do my own thing after about a decade.
But what got you into wine per se? After the music career, you could have done 10,000 other things. Why wine?
That's true. I mean, originally I wanted to be a professional volleyball player, but you're looking at me, that ain't going to happen. So, I kind of got to a point where I'm like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to spend my time? And wine had always intrigued me. I'm not a wine collector. I really enjoy wine, but I love the nuance of wine. And it goes back to a tasting I did at Chateau Montelena, the mid-'80s, trying early 80 cabs. And I had never had that experience before in my life. I'd had wines before, but never anything that kind of shook me to my soul. And it kind of was in the back of my mind. But when I decided to go wine, the first thought was I'll go into wine sales. I had a sales and marketing background. That would be the easy thing to do. But I really, like I said, was at a time where I wanted to challenge myself. I didn't feel I was pushing myself enough to move forward in my life. And winemaking was something I knew very little about. I just knew that you started with grapes and ended up with a product that's very different. And everyone had a different idea of what they were trying to achieve. And so my evolution, it's been a lot of fun to think of when I started the process and where I am now. I'm much more open-minded. I understand the science of wine. I teach the science of wine, but I also understand that science explains how wine gets into a bottle. Science doesn't explain wine.
But was wine part of your growing up, part of your family's culture or
Not
routine?
at all. Not at all. My dad was an elementary school teacher. My mom was raising 5 boys. The constant joke is there was probably a lot of hard alcohol hidden around the house. They would have wine occasionally. They didn't drink a lot. I mean, the blender would be on for margarita parties when they get together with their friends, but it was never part of our culture. My dad started drinking wine later on in his life, and that definitely was something that had an impact on me because we connected over wine. We connected over Robert Parker. We connected over ratings. We connected over going to dinner and enjoying a glass of wine, which is something I had not done growing up. So I didn't drink wine until later on in life.
Okay. So 10 years after Fess Parker, you started your own winery.
Nope, started it before that. I started it while I was at Fess Parker. The Parker family had always been very open about you can start a brand here. It has to be small. And I did that, but I got to a point pretty early on. I started a brand because I wanted to control the process from beginning to end. I don't grow grapes, but I wanted to make the decision when to pick, why I'm making that pick a decision, and carry it all the way forth.
Because in your mind, you thought yours is going to be different, the way you're making it, the way you're sourcing it, and so on. It's going to be different.
It's going to be me. Whether it's going to be different or not, I can't control that, but I'm gonna control the elements that go into that product. I had never created anything before. I'd always been a part of helping other people create and sell. So the idea of creating something was both scary and exciting at the same time, and that remains today. I'm the 2025 harvest. I'm not going to go into details, but I've done some of the scariest things I've ever done, and it's helping me grow because it's making me uncomfortable. If you're really comfortable, then you're just kind of doing things by rote. I don't want to do things by rote at all.
But you wanted to make Larry's wine. You want to make your wine because either you were not happy with others were making, or you thought you could make something better, or at a minimum different. Correct?
I simply wanted to create. I wanted to take it from beginning to end. I didn't really think about the final product and whether it was going to be different or not. And at first, I would say that definitely was not a thought process. For the first couple of years, I looked at what other people did, like, well, that must be what I should do. Even though I had a degree, that degree taught me, as I said, the science, the theoretical science of winemaking, but I was working with 4 other winemakers at Fest Parker, and they all had different philosophies of what they were doing. It was great.
But they decided what the style the wine was going to be because you were just helping them as opposed to you were not the head winemaker.
Correct, but they each also had their own brands, so they were doing things above and beyond that as well. But I like to say it took me 8-9 years of being in the wine industry to really feel comfortable that what I was doing was what I was meant to do.
And at the end, you knew what the end product was going to be like, taste like, smell like, correct?
No.
No?
I don't think any winemaker at the beginning of the process.
Is it a certain style?
There's a style in the way that I make my wine, but any winemaker who tastes a grape and says they know what the final product is going to be is fooling themselves because Mother Nature is going to throw so many wrenches at us. I think it's a romantic concept to think that. But for instance, you had another person on here recently who was talking about when they pick their grapes and they're looking for that ripeness. What I've learned is I'm not looking for that ripeness. By the time that grape gets ripe, the wine is going to have an exponentially greater ripeness quality to it. So I'm actually picking less than that, knowing that I'm still going to get plenty of ripeness. And that's learned over time.
Okay.
So
at some point, when you started your wine, you called it Tercero?
Correct.
What does Tercero mean?
So Tercero means third in Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yep. So I'm a third child.
Okay.
I had 3 kids. I recently got remarried, and I have a 4th, so that no longer holds.
So you're going to change the name? No.
Not going to change the name. And then when I went to school at UC Davis as an undergraduate, I lived in the dorms for 2 years. The dorms up there are Primero, Segundo, Tercero, and Cuarto. So Tercero it was. Now, 3 is not my favorite number. Any kid my age who played soccer, 10 was your favorite number because that was Pele. No one wanted to be a fullback. But the name is held, and it still holds.
Very good. And you make, what kind of wines do you make? What varietals do you make?
Too many.
And why is that?
I am a curious person who, even though I have a business degree, doesn't understand the business of wine well enough to know that I shouldn't. I've made over 15 different varieties of wines. And in most cases, I bottle them as individual varieties, not as blends. So I concentrate on Rhone varieties. There are 22 of them, of which probably 15, 16 are available in this country. And not all of them necessarily should be bottled on their own. Very few are bottled on their own in the Rhone. But I've found a love for working with these individual varieties and showing them off. Because Rhone varieties to me are kind of like an orchestra, right? You have a piccolo and you have a French horn and you have everything in between. And they're beautiful on their own, but they can also work well together. So I just make a bunch of them. I started only doing Rhones. My first vintage was Grenache Blanc, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, and a blend. I then expanded into Gewürztraminer, and people say, why Gewürztraminer? That grape is so unique. From the moment you taste that berry tastes the way the wine smells. So as a winemaker, it's winemaking by depletion. Because all I can do is lose what I've been given, as opposed to other winemaking where you're actually making something out of. Gewürztraminer, you're just holding on to what it is. And then I've gone to more Rhone varieties. Santa Barbara County is beautiful in that we grow a lot of different Rhone varieties there.
Why is that?
Because the soil and climate, et cetera, allow us to do it. And the wineries and vineyard owners are willing to plant small bits of different types of varieties and not just plant the everyday varieties.
And have you eventually added Syrah as well?
I started with Syrah.
Okay.
And I still make a Syrah. I love that variety. I will find Syrahs oftentimes too heavy. And so I like working with varieties like Counoise and Senso, even a lighter Grenache. They all work differently on their own and with food. And what I find is that when I have a Syrah, I need something heavy, usually to eat it with, and I don't tend to eat really heavy foods. I also find many Syrahs will overpower food as opposed to complement food. I think there's certainly a huge movement in our industry to lighter reds. I don't think the consumers are necessarily caught up to that, but winemakers talk about that all the time. And I think one of the reasons is from a food perspective.
You know, I asked this to many winemakers who are making Syrah, and I asked them, whether are you trying to make Côte Rôtie in California?
We can't make Côte Rôtie in California. So the whole idea is, and it's really interesting because most California winemakers are going to say, well, I only want to make cool climate Syrah. There's very few spots in California that are going to actually provide the weather, climate, soil to be able to do true cool climate Syrah. We can fit a circle into a square. You can pick earlier, right? And it's going to give you some of those elements. I've made Côte Rôtie style wines. I've co-fermented with Viognier, depending upon the site. And I really love those wines. But I love the expression of Syrah just as it is, regardless of what it is. And it's a chameleon of a variety. It could produce a beautiful wine at 12% alcohol and a beautiful wine at 17% alcohol. There's a lot of people in our industry who look down upon those warmer climate wines because they're just fruit.
Right.
They're very popular wines.
Well, yes.
And I never want to give the consumer the idea that they shouldn't enjoy something that they do, because from a winemaking standpoint, we don't feel that that's as superior a type of grape, a superior type of expression of the grape.
But when you're making this many varietals, 15 you said.
Yeah.
Do you have to do a lot of educating the customer about what Picpoul is, what Counoise is, what all the other varietals are? Because most wine consumers are either drinking Cab, Merlot, Syrah, Pinot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. And the rest, it's a hand sell in the retail market. And it's a lot of tasting events, a lot of wine events, a lot of education, a lot of money spent on marketing and promotion.
This is the path I've chosen. I love working with these varieties. They are underdog varieties, without a doubt, and they definitely take hand sell. It's also one of the reasons I'm part of the Santa Rita Hills Wine Alliance, to educate people about that. It's one of the reasons I'm part of the Rhone Rangers. It's one of the reasons I'm active in the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association as well. We need to continue to educate people one person at a time. I will compare varieties to other varieties that might be familiar to them. So I might say Picpoul is Sauvignon Blanc-like, but it's not. But it'll give people a basis.
Reference point.
And I have no problem doing that with any of my wines. Counoise, it's a beautiful light red wine. I use a lot of music analogies. And I like
given your background.
Well, not only given my background, but the wine industry, basically most of the terminology we use has stolen from the music industry. We're talking about highs and lows and balance, etc. Right? That's music.
Okay.
But I like to say that every one of my wines is like a song on an album, a chapter in a book. It has to have its own lane.
That's a good metaphor, actually.
And every one of my wines expresses itself differently, but not because I'm doing anything, but because the variety itself is different. And that's what I try to explain to people, that winemaking really should not be about the winemaker. We talk about winemaking being about site process, but then a lot of winemakers do things to alter
but isn't that are wines made from, in this case, your point of view?
They're made from my point of view. They're always made from my point of view. But I'm a huge believer in typicity in wine. That if I have a Picpoul, it should remind you of what a Picpoul is from where it originated from. Not identical to. If I pour a Pinot Noir, it shouldn't taste like a Syrah. And if I pour a Grenache,
by the way, that's funny because a lot of them do.
And if I pour a Grenache, it shouldn't taste like a Syrah.
Right.
So it's a challenge, because I think many consumers have kind of gone to the middle. The bell curve is fruity, whether it's extracted or not, but big wines that are kind of monotone in nature, and that could be any variety. I would feel defeated. So I want to give different expressions, not based on me per se, though yes, I am making steps. No winemaker allows the grapes to make themselves. That doesn't happen. We understand the science of it. And I do a couple of things. Like all of my reds are foot stomped by me. All of my reds are done with 100% stems. I really like what stems bring to the table. Using a music analogy, I like to say stems make my wines more like old school vinyl. They add scratches, they add imperfections, and I think personally wine is more interesting when you're drawn to it. I don't want my wines to be background. I want you to put your nose in and have a reaction to it. No different than you do with art, no different than you do with a lot of music and food.
And how are these less known varietals being received by customers?
Well, you have to get them to try them first.
Sure.
So this is why I do the events that I do. This is why
Were you at the Vintners Festival recently?
I was. I actually was pouring for the Rhone Rangers. I had a table for the Rhone Rangers, but they also had something called the Wine Camp. And I gave a 20-minute conversation about Rhone varieties. And I tried to explain what Rhone varieties are not. They're not common. They're not conventional. They're not, I think people don't understand Rhone varieties. We need to find a different language to try to explain that to people. But I've been at Vintners. I was at the Garage Yeast Festival in Paso. I do a lot of events. I want to get myself out there as much as possible. I'm a 70s garage band, using another music analogy. You don't know if you're going to like something unless you try it. And you can't sit back and hope people are going to try it. And even if you get your wine on a list at a restaurant, there's no guarantee they're going to try that wine. So I want to expose my wine to as many people as I can. It is not... The costing is really challenging. A lot of events are becoming more and more and more expensive, and so I need to be very selective. I've also come to the conclusion that a lot of food and wine events are not really wine events at all. They're food events. And if you look at the talent that they mention, there's never a winery. So if wine is part of the talent, we as an industry need to step up and say, without that food, without this wine, the food is not going to be there. They have to go hand in hand. And I think we just need to get a little bit more adventurous about that. Wine has always been the type of thing we donate to, right? And not realizing what the cost involved is. And that has to change to some extent.
And that's why a lot of organizations like the Santa Barbara Vintner Association, it's more wine focused. And food is the secondary. Is an assisting role, as opposed to them being the main focus.
I mean, we are a vintners, right? It's a vintners association, but we are celebrating all of Santa Barbara County. There were probably more restaurants at this event than at any previous vintners. So we feel it's important to highlight everything about Santa Barbara County. As another person spoke about before, people in LA and Orange County are bound to drive by Santa Barbara County to go to Paso because they don't realize what we have to offer, because we've done a terrible job marketing our region.
They're missing out on tremendous
Well, they
wines.
are, but I can't blame them because as a region, we've done a terrible job educating people. Paso has done a tremendous job. I know a lot of the people that are helping market that. I'm jealous.
Paso is a much bigger region as well, right? Appellation.
It's a bigger appellation land-wise, and they do have larger wineries up there, but there's a tremendous number of smaller wineries, just like there are in Santa Barbara County. We have the proximity to Los Angeles that they don't, and yet when I go to restaurants in LA, I'm as apt to find a Paso wine on the list as I am a Santa Barbara County wine. So there's a provincialism up there that doesn't exist here. If you go to a restaurant in Paso, you're not going to find Santa Barbara County wines.
Really?
Go to restaurants in Santa Barbara, you'll find plenty of Paso wines.
Well, not only that, I've told this to other people as well. You go to restaurants in Solvang, in Santa Barbara, you find Chilean wines on the wine list.
And I think it's okay to have some international wines. I don't think it's wise to be so regimented, but if you can find the same variety from Chile that's grown in Santa Barbara County, you should show off Santa Barbara County.
Definitely.
So if you're an Italian restaurant, you can't expect to have, you would expect to have some Italian wines on the list.
And I give you that, yes, but finding Chilean wines on an Italian restaurant wine list in Solvang, come on. That means that the distributor pushed it on them.
It means that salespeople are very good at what they do at times. And I can't deny the fact that they've been able to make that happen. I just hope that the restaurateur thinks a little bit about provincialism, about showing off what's best. If they're locavores when it comes to the food that they're serving on the table, the meat they're purchasing, the vegetables that they're serving, the same should be said for every other aspect, if possible.
that may also have to do with the pricing as well, the price points as well, given that the Chilean wines probably cost the restaurant $4 as opposed to whatever the going rates are for Santa Barbara County wines.
It could, but they're probably going to charge as much as a Santa Barbara County wine, but
Yeah,
they're going to mark it
absolutely.
up. And there are plenty of inexpensive Santa Barbara County wines. Are they going to come in as cheap as some Chilean wine that the government is helping to support? No, it's not
No.
going to happen. But there's value in Santa Barbara County wines relative to other regions. I mean, I love to say that the average Santa Barbara County wine at the price that it is probably offers you better value than most other regions in California, short of, I mean, Lodi does a great job. Monterey County does a great job. There's some really value price stuff. But if we're going to talk Paso or Sonoma or Napa, I think what you get for your money goes farther in Santa Barbara County for the average wine than it does in those other regions.
You said that you collectively have not done a good job of marketing Santa Barbara or Solvangos and Inez Valleys to LA consumers. But have you done a good job within the Santa Barbara County of making your wines available in stores or restaurants?
I mean, it's a challenging market out there, and I'm a one-man show. So my wines are available selectively. And in Santa Barbara itself, there are a number of restaurants that do specialize in having Santa Barbara forward lists, just not as many as I would think. For the reason you brought up, either it's cost or it's a distributor or it's a broker relationship. A lot of the brokers, distributors in our area also distribute Paso wines. So they're going to come in with a book that shows all of those, not just Santa Barbara proper.
And you probably are also dealing with a lot of tourists in Santa Barbara. So there's a whole concept of familiarity with certain brands that tourists are familiar with.
There is, and that's kind of the push-pull, right? How are they going to become familiar with our brand if they're not exposed to it? But maybe we're not going to expose them because it's easier to sell them something that they're familiar with already.
It's always. But you mentioned that you're a one-man show. What's your annual production?
Usually between about 1,000 and 2,000 cases a year. It's pretty broad depending upon. I didn't make as much wine this year. I like to say I'm wine rich and cash poor. I have plenty of wine, though. We did experiments. So this year we did some pet nats. Had
Really?
never done pet
Okay.
nats before, and I was talking about before these have scared the heck out of me because you are trusting the process that I've never used before. So it's still in progress right now. We have a Cab Franc and we have a Chenin Blanc. And we've opened a couple of the Cab Francs, and yes, they're fermenting as they should be, which is great. We will probably open the first Chenin Blanc tonight to see how its progress is going. But it's scary to do something you've never done before.
And you also are making Pinot Noir. How long have you been making Pinot Noir?
Started making Pinot Noir in 2020, and I give 3 reasons why I started. Number one, 2020 was a year to do something different.
Okay.
Number two, I recently got remarried. My wife loves Pinot and said if I don't, there's going to be some issues. And number three, we should not ever say never or always. I'm a Rhone guy. I kind of drew a line in the sand and said I was not going to make that because everyone is making that. But to me, Pinot was known as this heartbreak grape that's really difficult to work with. I wouldn't say it's any more difficult than most varieties, though it's a grape that does best in cool climates. And anytime you work with a variety of any vegetation that does best in cool climates, it's challenging if you don't get the conditions correct. But I realized that I had a story to tell that was different than what other people are doing. It's all 100% stems. It's all aged in older oak. It's only one site. In 2020, I worked with 3 different clones. In 2021, 4. I named each clone for one of my 4 kids. So not only am I bottling a blend, but I'm bottling the individual clones to show people in the same way that if you're in the Rhone, if you have a Chateauneuf, or if you have a Grenache, a Syrah, and a Mourvèdre, you can show people how the sum equals the whole. So that's kind of why I did this. I work with individual clones, which to me are very expressive on their own and can make their own wine. There's certain clones I won't work with just because I don't find them very interesting. So it allows me, from a storytelling standpoint, to compare them to music analogies or to Rhone varieties. So like I say with this is clone 115 is the lead clone. From this site, it reminds me of Grenache, or in musical terms, treble. It's all the high notes, right? The Syrah is the bass and drums. It's the Pomard clone. It's the backbone of the wine. And then the 114 is the Mourvèdre. It's the reverb. It screws it up in a beautiful way. It's why are Chateauneuf du Pape reds so beloved? They're beloved because it's a great combination of fruit and earth, right? Without that Mourvèdre bringing that garrigue and everything else in, it's a pretty boring wine.
Okay. And obviously you sourced this from Castle Hawk Vineyard, which is a very famous vineyard.
Correct. I source all my fruit.
So I was going to ask, you source all your fruit?
I do. I've sourced all my fruit. Have sourced all my fruit. A lot of winemakers, their goal is to have their own vineyard. It's not one of my goals. It's not a bad thing. I just think it's a romanticized concept. But what I love about Santa Barbara County is the diverse climates we have allow me to work with the same variety from multiple sites. For instance, I do a Grenache from Larner Vineyard in Ballard Canyon. I do a Grenache from Watch Hill in Los Alamos, and I do a Grenache from the Spear Vineyard in Santa Rita Hills. Incredibly different presentation, even though I'm working the same with all of them.
And being a one-man show, how does distribution work?
One person at a time. As I said,
talk about distribution is a big thing, because if you don't have the proper distribution, you don't get your wine in front of people. You don't get to sell them. So
I have a tasting room in Los Olivos. Now there are 40 of us in Los Olivos, so there's a lot. But I do have a tasting room. I'm active on social media, and that piques people's interest as well. So distribution is important. It's not the end all that it used to be. One of the things,
you have direct access to customers now.
I have more direct access, and I think customers appreciate that more now than ever. It's a very competitive marketplace. And when I have an appointment to see somebody, my first thing when I see them is, thank you for seeing me. You don't need to. No one needs my wine. Every winemaker who feels like everyone needs your wine is kind of missing the point. I know winemakers that will come to LA, try to sell, come back, and they're very disappointed. I said, well, maybe the price point wasn't right. Maybe you hit them on wrong timing. Maybe they didn't have an opening for that variety. I mean, there's so many reasons why. So I never get discouraged. It just makes me work that much harder. So I do get down to LA, Orange County. Actually going to be going to Texas. Rhone Rangers will be doing an event in Texas to try to introduce people to my wines. But it's an uphill battle. And for distribution, I make hand sell wines. I don't make wines that some distributor goes, I can sell the heck out of that. It's not, It's generally not the way it is. So I need to find somebody who shares the same passion that I do. And that's just really tough in this day and age, because you're just not going to see that. The cost involved in pushing a product is very high. And if a distributor is going to buy my wines, it's going to be on them. That's a lot of responsibility for them. They have to figure out how to do that. So my wines are hand sell wines. As I said, it's the path I've chosen, but I love the wines that I make. And I feel that they are all very distinctive.
To me, wine placement, distribution boils down to personal relationships that I have developed over the years, whether it's with restaurant owners or retailers or even distributors that I've developed relationship with. That's what gets you into the door. But that still doesn't guarantee a sale. It gets you into the door.
Right. So what's going to guarantee you a sale is social media and everything around that. But what you have an advantage of is, A, you live in this area. B, you're constantly in front of people on a regular basis. So you had another person on recently that mentioned the fact if you can only be visiting a retailer every 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 weeks, they're not going to have the familiarity. So I know a wine shop will say, gosh, I'm looking for Chardonnays between this price and this price. They're going to call their 3 best or distributors that they get along with the best, and they're going to get all they need. They don't have to look anywhere else than that. I get that. I mean, I say that my wines are loose ends. Not in a bad way, but if I'm a restaurant or if I'm a wine shop and I buy 90% of my wine from 3 or 4 distributors, that's 3 or 4 checks. That is 1 phone call a week that I can combine all these orders. So it is more challenging. And any winery who thinks otherwise is, again, kind of fooling themselves. Nothing should be easy in our industry. We want it to be, but nothing is going to be easy in our industry. We have to work at it. And I have no problem working as hard as I can at it.
How much do your wines retail for on average, more or less?
Anywhere from about 30 to 60.
Okay. And I think that's right in the middle part when it comes to Santa Barbara wines, right? Correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's very few Santa Barbara County wines under 30. Right. You'll find them discounted down to 25, 23. But there are quite a few that are over 60.
Right.
And becoming more so now, especially on the Pinot side, but also on the Cab side from Happy Canyon. Just because with Cabs you feel you can get that, and so you do.
And I think Happy Canyon has developed a name for himself recently.
Better than they did, but they still have a long way to go. Because when people think of Santa Barbara County, they don't think of Cab. Right. They're starting to think of Sauvignon Blanc, so they're starting to think of white Bordeaux, but they're not necessarily thinking of any Bordeaux varieties coming from our region. I think that's going to change. But it's going to take work. It's going to take a concerted effort on Santa Barbara County as a whole to say, oh, you want cabs? We have that. Oh, you want Pinots? We have that. You want sparkling? We have that. There's nothing you can't find at a really high quality in our county, but we have to explain that to people. We can't assume. I like to say that one of the problems in the wine business is there's a lot of hubris. I make great wines. Everyone should know about it. The best musician in the world has never been heard because they didn't work hard enough. They weren't in the right place at the right time. A lot of this comes down to luck. Right?
Okay.
And you and I both know that. You can be at a show and somebody can go, gosh, I had never had that variety. I love that variety. They can champion that and all of a sudden things have changed. You can have a winery that one of your wines gets put into a television show or somebody wears a t-shirt of your brand and things can explode that have nothing to do with what's inside the bottle.
When people are asking for Cabernet or Sauvignon Blanc, I'm talking about the American wine consumer. Are they thinking about Bordeaux or are they just thinking about the varietal?
I think they're just thinking of the variety. And I
Correct.
think they're thinking of the style. So, if you're asking for more Cabernet, that could be Paso, that could be Napa.
And given the taste profile of a lot of these fruit-forward wines, Cabs, Malbec, or the oaky Chardonnays that people enjoy drinking.
Sure. It's difficult to tell where they're from. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, which is why I work with the varieties I work with, which is why I do the methodologies that I do. What is a Napa Cab these days? What is a Paso Cab? I mean, the fact that Dow could sell for as much as it did because a third party said, you know what? I can produce high-quality cab that has a flavor profile from a region that the grapes are not as expensive, the land is not as expensive. They're probably going to do pretty well with that purchase, is my guess. Because when you're buying a $50 or $60 or $70 cab, I don't find there's as much flavor difference between those as, say, like a $30 to $70 Syrah, for instance, in most cases.
If you're not drinking your wines, what are you drinking?
Gin and tonics.
Really?
I love wine, but I also appreciate the nuance in wine, and I want to be able to spend time with every glass that I have. I think back to so many wines that I poured down the drains when I was younger because I just didn't give them the benefit of time to open up, to express themselves. I never want to do that again. So I enjoy wine. I enjoy wines of distinction. If I'm at a restaurant and I don't know what wine to order, I'm going to order a Beaujolais or I'm going to order a Chinon. I like underdog regions as well.
But you're not enamored by Barolo or by Burgundy or Côte d'Iron, what have you?
I'm enamored with it all. I'm more knowledgeable about some things than other. I get scared of the pricing, just like any general consumer does. I'm not somebody who's willing to pay a tremendous amount of money for something I've never had. I don't have the Burgundy bug. I'm a Rhone guy, not a Burgundy guy. For instance,
fair enough, but
but I'm making Pinot, right? So, but I like distinctive wines. So I tell people the wines I drink, and this is not meant as a knock against anything else, but if we're looking in art terms, I'm not a Thomas Kincaid guy. It's wallpaper. I don't want wine to be monotone. I don't want music to be monotone. I want there to be highs and lows. I would rather drink or experience a natty, bready VA wine than a fruity wine that has no character. Because to me, if wine is art, art should affect you, right? You may not like it. And I don't take offense when somebody doesn't like a wine of mine. I can't. I made it, but I can't control their interpretation of it. But I want them to experience it. And I don't want them to go, eh. To me, I don't want my wines to be considered pedestrian.
Definitely. But do you take any wine to a restaurant with you and pay the corkage fee?
Rarely.
Really?
I do. One of my brothers celebrated his 60th birthday recently, and we were in Vegas, and I brought a 1965 Charles Krug Napa Cab. I was more than happy to pay the corkage.
Right. I mean, that's what I do. A lot of time I just take the wine with me. I have no problem paying the corkage. But knowing what the cost of that particular bottle of wine is and how much I'm being asked to pay, I'm more than happy to pay the corkage for a much better wine that I really want to enjoy, and I'll pay the corkage, no problem.
It is a challenge. That is one of the things that people point to.
That's common around here in LA.
It's common everywhere. I mean,
Right.
you can point to a handful of restaurants that get it, that charge 10 or 15 or 20% more than what they pay or what the general retail price is. It's a problem. People point at that as one of the biggest challenges in the wine industry. I think 20, 30 years ago it was. I don't think it is now, because I don't think people have their first experience with wine at a restaurant. It's going to be at home. It's not going to be at a restaurant. So first of all, I don't go to restaurants all that often. I have a 3-year-old. And she's a monster, a beautiful monster. So we don't go out all that often.
I remember.
And when I do, I generally am not going to have that much wine. If I'm with friends, it depends on the scenario.
Right.
Because I'd have no problem pulling a mid-'80s Napa Cab out of my cellar and sharing it with people. I love that. I have no problem pulling anything out, because to me, wine should be opened up. It should be shared. It shouldn't be kept in a cellar. But I don't drink that much wine at restaurants these days. And just with the cost of going out as well, in general. I'm not entertaining people on a regular basis. When I was in other industries, that's what I did. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm a social person, but I'm not hanging out with a lot of other wine geeks on a regular basis. I'm in a pretty isolated area. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm in LA. If I was in LA or Orange County, it'd be a lot easier 3-4 days a week to hang out with people and just share bottles. And I just don't do that.
Are you seeing certain trends among customers, what they're drinking, what they're not drinking? How changes in consumption?
I need to look at this as kind of micro and macro, right? Because I'm a fan of the business, of the wine business as a whole. So there's things that I see happening in a wider scale. With me, people are just drinking less. The reality is...
less of everything, or less of wine?
I think probably less of everything. I think people stocked up during COVID. I think
the stock still lasted?
The stock still lasted during COVID. It's still there. They consumed a lot. Older generation is not buying as much because they realize now they have enough for themselves, their kids, and their kids' kids. At some point, when you have 1,000 bottles, what are you going to do with it? So I think there's a couple of factors. With my brand, people are still... I'm still growing. There are people that are still intrigued about what I'm doing, but I'm having to work 7 times harder than I did only a couple of years ago to get the word out there. So even on social media, it's so cluttered, right? Which is why I love the opportunity you're giving me to talk about what I do. I take every one of these opportunities seriously. And people oftentimes wonder, why do I spend time on social media? Because the conversation is important to me. Right. We need to make people feel more comfortable about wine. And I need to let people know that my philosophy might be different than other people in terms of why I do what I do.
Okay, it's interesting. I think people are drinking different things as opposed to less wine. People are, especially younger generations, they are drinking more maybe craft beers or other beverages. There are a lot of ready-made beverages out there that people are consuming again, but it's different. Definitely, it's different.
And the whole ready-to-drink cocktails, it makes a great deal of sense. We live in a convenience society. How many people go to a supermarket, pick up a ready-to-go meal, and away you go? Why would you not do the same with a cocktail?
Right.
Even though cocktails are not that complicated, if you can buy a 4-pack of cocktails for $12,
right?
It's one of the things I talked about before. That there's no commitment there. You buy a bottle of wine. It's a little more, I think people are a little more stressed about the concept of it. Like, what am I going to serve it with? Who am I going to have it with? Are people going to like it or not? Because they feel it's going to have some reflection upon them personally.
And is that why they always revert back to buying what they know as opposed to experimenting with something, a new varietal or a new brand or from a new region?
Exactly. And to me, I have no problem with that. From a guy doing what I do, it's a challenge. But the reality is, when you buy Kennel Jack's Improv Reserve Chardonnay, you know what to expect year in, year out. And a lot of the wine industry looks down upon that. They say, guys, well, why don't people explore? Well, we can look at everything in our lives and say, okay, why don't you have a new haircut? Why don't you go to a new restaurant? We get comfortable. And with wine, though our industry continues to say it's not as intimidating as it used to be, it's still intimidating to most consumers. So if they look at a bottle and they're familiar with it, bam, easy. And they can explain it to a friend of theirs in a way that makes sense to them. So there's real value in having those benchmark wines out there. I hope that's not only what people drink, but if it is, so be it.
So be it. You mentioned the Rhone Rangers a few times. tell us what are the Rhone Rangers and what they do.
Sure. The Rhone Rangers is an organization.
You're the president this year. Or
I'm president of the board of directors for 2 years. I like to say that it's because I stood still when everyone else on the board took a step back. There's no advantage to being the president other than I speak more at our board meetings. But the Rhone Rangers is an organization I've been actively a part of now for about 17 years.
Oh, okay.
It's an advocacy group to help educate people about Rhone varieties grown domestically. So we've been talking a lot about Cab and Pinot. Well, these are the forgotten varieties. These are varieties, not forgotten, just unknown varieties, right? So it's our goal as an organization to help elevate these varieties in the eyes of consumers and to support the wineries that are making these varieties.
Within the U.S.?
Within the U.S. only, but within the U.S., we have 130 winery members right now, and that includes Texas. In fact, that's probably the fastest growing region we have is in Texas. Oh, Rhone varieties are doing great in Texas.
I go to Texas events every August.
Yes.
And more Texas wineries are showing up with their wine, pouring it throughout the whole conference.
The challenge is for the wine industry not to look at Texas wine as an oxymoron. And unfortunately, historically, that's the way it's been. But there's a lot of new people that have jumped into the industry over the last 2 decades. One of the challenges farming has generally been, with wine grapes, has been, why don't we farm it like we do every other crop? So large yield, oftentimes throwing a bunch of chemicals at it. That's changing. It's all changing. So what's happening in the high plains, what's happening in hill country is exciting. William Chris Winery, and Chris is on the board with me, the Rhone Rangers, was just named one of the top 50 wineries in the world. When we were in Texas last year, people were trying some of the reds, some of the California winemakers were, and they said, well, these wines aren't in balance. And I said, they're in balance. They're Texas wines. Texas is not going to make wines. I'm sure that if we poured some of our wines for people in Oregon, they might say the same thing. If we poured some of our wines for people in Bordeaux, they might say the same thing. So I think that we can only make wine in the style that suits where we're making it from. So going back to the Côte Rôtie, do I love it when somebody says, oh my gosh, this reminds me of a Northern Rhone? Yes. Can I make that happen? No. But it's nice when I get that comparison.
So the goal of this organization is to introduce market Rhone varietals to American wine consumers.
It's to educate people about all these other varieties that are out there, right? So people are familiar with Bordeaux, they're familiar with Burgundy, they're not familiar with the Loire Valley, they're not familiar with a lot of other regions, and so there's.
So what do they do? What are some of the events they organize, or what the efforts do they make to educate the customers?
Sure. So we have an active website. We have active social media. Our members, we're constantly spotlighting our members and the types of wines that they're producing. We hold a main event in March in Paso Robles.
By the way, there used to be events held in Los Angeles also a few years back, which stopped now.
They did. We are a nonprofit organization. We don't charge a lot for our events. Mm-hmm. We need to be very careful economically what we do. Because Rhone varieties are not mainstream varieties, it's a challenge to get people to come to those events. So we can think we're going to put a wine event on, we're going to get hundreds and hundreds. The reality is we're not there yet. Certain events we do. The Paso event, we get 500 people. We are doing an event in McMinnville in Oregon, most likely in June. We're looking at going back to San Francisco. We haven't done an event in San Francisco in probably 8 years, and that's where we got our start. So the first main Rhone Ranger, official Rhone Ranger event was about 1997, 1998. The organization had been in existence before then, but the Rhone Rangers is also, it was started by a bunch of people who didn't want to be part of a group.
By creating a group.
They were renegades, and it took one or two of them to say, you know what, I'll put it on my shoulders. And it's a member-driven organization. It's a volunteer organization.
You have some large members.
Well, relatively large members. I mean, Tablas Creek is a large member. Klein is a large member. We have a handful, but Rhone varieties are not mainstream varieties. So it's pretty difficult to say large in relationship to others. Though like J. Lohr is a member, and they're a very large winery. So there are a handful of much larger wineries. Ridge has been a member for a number of years. But like I said, 130 of them. We have members in Virginia. We have members in Michigan, Arizona, California, Washington, Oregon, and Texas. And we'll be going back to Texas. We did our first ever event in Texas last year. We have 20 Texas wineries and about 10 from California and one from Oregon pouring.
And how were you received? How was the event received?
Unbelievably
Where was it held?
well.
Houston or Dallas?
It was actually held in wine country. It was held at William Chris in Fredericksburg, or in High, right next to Fredericksburg. And then we did a trade event in Austin. This year we're going to Houston as well. So again, being
You're seeing a growth there.
we see growth there.
So you're making effort, putting
we-
resources into there.
We know that Texas is one of the largest direct-to-consumer states in the country. They're used to buying wines. They're used to buying Napa wines, Sonoma wines, big reds, so to speak. But they're also curious wine drinkers. And a place like Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the country. And they're open to pretty much everything and anything. So we're excited to be doing an event there for the first time. And these are baby steps, right? We're looking at this organization. All we're trying to do is get people to think of these varieties. And the great thing is when you come to a Rhone Ranger event, most of the consumers are like, oh, pick pool. Yeah, I've had that before. When I do the Vintners Association, you don't get that same reaction to the general consumer.
Your constituency is different.
Constituency is different, which is fine because as a winemaker, we talked about this before, but the wine industry has to get used to having a two-way conversation, not a one-way conversation. We have to learn the language of the person in front of us. So if I'm speaking to somebody at Vintners Association, I am going to talk differently than I am at the Rhone Rangers. So if you're an artist that comes into my wine facility, I'm going to talk in terms of palettes. I'm going to talk in terms of strokes. I'm not going to talk in terms of terroir, right? If you're a musician, I'm going to talk in terms of highs and lows and bands and other things. I think that's one of the things we just don't do a good enough job doing. We have a script. We stay with that script. We assume customers are going to come to us. Most consumers don't know about most of the terms we use.
Right.
And they don't really care. And I don't try to discount that, but at the end of the day, they want to enjoy what's in front of them. So find the language to make them enjoy that.
Well, to me, I believe there are two kinds of customers. One, you give them what they want. The others are open to experimenting. The trick is for the first group to evolve to the second group.
I don't know if it's necessarily an evolution. I know we talk about that a lot in the macro sense. There are people that naturally are curious, and there are people that are not naturally curious. Okay. There's people that go to the same restaurant all the time and have never had Thai food. I grew up in a family like that. I didn't have Thai food until I was about 18, and I cursed my parents out for never having me have that before. Right. So, but there are people that are very comfortable. Listen, we all think that people take this journey in wine. There's people that start at White Zinfandel and stay at White Zinfandel because they like it. Right. And they have no desire to go elsewhere. And they've tried other things, and it just doesn't appeal to them. In the old world, there's a bottle of wine on the table. At lunch, a bottle of wine at dinner. You have it, you don't have it. We don't make much of it. It's just an agricultural product that's made in the same way the fruits and vegetables come from the fields. We make a lot more of that in this country. We need to get back to the fact that it's just something to be enjoyed and let people find the enjoyment that they have. And if we can get them to try something, great. If we can't, that's okay too. We can't lament that fact. We just need to double down that that's a certain group of people that are going to enjoy those wines. We live in a huge country. Hundreds of millions of people. We'll find other people to find out about Pickpool. It's going to be a small subset of people, but they're out there.
Earlier, you said that you tell me what kind of coffee you drink, and I'll tell you what wines you enjoy. Is that a fair characterization?
It is. It's one of the things I've learned over time from other people. I didn't make this up, but generally the way you drink your coffee dictates tendencies in your palate. So, do you drink your coffee black, or do you need milk or cream in it?
I drink my coffee black. No sugar, no cream.
Okay. So that tells me we're not even going to go wine. That tells me if I give you scotch, you're going to prefer it neat. If you drink scotch. It tells me you probably prefer savory food over sweet, cheese over chocolate. If it is chocolate, it's probably going to be dark over milk. It tells me you probably like Brussels sprouts a lot, to the point where I can shave them raw, and it's fine. It tells me you probably like pickled things. It tells me if I give you a cocktail, it's going to be a Negroni or Campari water. It's not going to be a daiquiri. It tells me that you're going to lean towards the wines that you distribute. Old world, rustic, earthy reds, and bone dry or full-bodied whites.
I must say, you're pretty accurate.
So let's simplify things. You drink your coffee black and enjoy it black because you don't have a lot of bitter taste buds. So bitter foods don't bother you. So take it out of wine, put it into food. Now we're talking a common language. Cocktails, we're talking a common language. So if you don't mind bitter things, you all generally don't mind acidic things unless you have acid reflux, which comes into play at times. But you tend to have a lot more sweet taste buds. So sweet sets you off. So if I give you a fruity red wine, it's going to taste sweet to you. If you drink your coffee with cream, it's going to taste fruity. So this whole concept of Meiomi being so sweet, if you drink your coffee with cream, it's not sweet, it's fruity. So the language we use doesn't take that one point into account. We're not even getting into smells because that's all based on culture and everything else. But when it comes to bitterness, either we have a lot of bitter taste buds or we don't. Now, people can say, I can drink my coffee anyway. That's great. But if you can drink it black, you're going to lean towards wanting more earthy, bitter things because they don't bother you.
Absolutely.
So it's the most humanistic way I've found to talk about wine without talking about wine. So I know that if you want a cab, you don't want a Paso or Napa cab. You want an old world Napa cab or you want Bordeaux. And if you want a Pinot, you're probably going to
Or an older Napa cab,
Right.
which is like at least 10, 15, 20 years old.
Or certain producers that still make a Mathiasen, a Mayacamus. If I say you want a Pinot, I know you're going to want Oregon, you're going to want Burgundy, you're going to want Sonoma Coast. You're probably not going to want Russian River.
Okay.
And it's not an absolute, but it's a much simpler way. Now, there's variations. My favorite, I had a guy, he loved everything bitter, wouldn't drink his coffee black.
Wow,
Like,
okay.
why not? He goes, well, my dad would drink it black. My dad would breathe on me. I hate my dad. When you talk about food and you talk about aromatics and stuff, people open up. And you start hearing things that is normal to them. It may not be normal to anyone else. And it's part of that conversation, as I said before. So by asking that coffee question, now we have a two-way conversation. Now we can go from there. Now you're comfortable.
I'm going to say that's pretty accurate. I like the analysis, and I like the way you describe the whole thing. It's pretty accurate, I'm going to say.
It's really fun. I do have people that get mad at me because they don't want to be categorized.
No, this is quite fascinating.
And
to
I
me.
have people that say they like all wines. I'm like, great. It's like people that say like all music. Like, name 3 songs. Probably not going to be 3 different genres, right? So I use the analogy. My wife and I were in Nashville a number of years ago, went to the Grand Ole Opry, saw Brad Paisley. It was a great show. Am I going to put him on Spotify? No, not my music, but I can appreciate it. So I can appreciate White Zinfandel. For me, the question is whether I want a second glass. And I like to tell people my goal is to make second glass wines. You have a glass, you want a second wine.
Absolutely.
You know, if I have
You can always sell the first glass.
You can always sell the first glass, but to me, if I only want one glass of wine, that's a cocktail. I'd rather have a cocktail.
And is there a association or link between certain type of wine consumers and the music they appreciate?
I wish. I've not found that link yet. I'd love to find that link, but it is really fun talking about music with people because, again, they open up. You're starting a line of conversation where you're finding out about them.
Right.
What I do is one person at a time, and that's not the way our industry thinks. Our industry thinks on the macro level. I think on the micro level. Right. I'm happy spending 2 hours talking to you because this is what's important to me. So when I'm at a big wine event like Vintners Association, some people do get a little upset because they're in a line of people, and I really want to spend time with that person in front of me. And that's not what most people want to do. They just pour me the wine. And if they don't come back, that's okay. I can't control that. But I have to kind of be true to myself.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And thank you very much. Listen, thanks for coming in today. But before we end, look at this camera here, please, and tell me what you want people to know about you, your wines, and how they can get them.
Sure. Well, I just want people to understand that I want to find a wine that you're going to enjoy. I make small lot wines from Santa Barbara County, only Santa Barbara County fruit. All my reds are foot stomped by me, fermented with the stems, aged in older oak, oftentimes for an extended period of time. I love the process by which wine is made, but I don't want to have a heavy hand in that whatsoever. I make wines that are all very distinctive. And so you can find my wines online at tercerowines.com. So Tercero. You can find my wines in some retailers and wine shops. And I'm oftentimes at events. So if you know I'm going to be there, please stop by. Say hi. I would love to have the conversation.
Larry, thank you very much again. I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you had a chance to talk. I love talking wine, and I appreciate what you've done and continue to do. Thank you again. And remember, always drink the good stuff. Cheers, everybody.